and talk with someone who has been where you are. Your call is confidential. 866-482-LIFE.
Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%. And that's why we're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security.
Nothing this president says should be taken to heart.
This administration has totally not done anything moral.
This is really awful.
The United States should be open to immigrants.
He's spewing his fascist ideology on stage, telling you as citizens to go back because they don't agree with his detrimental policies.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Well, hi there, everyone. Brian on vacation. Fred Jackson sitting in again for Brian on this Friday. TGIF. Hope you have some great weekend plans ahead. I've been listening to weather forecasts up in the Northeast. Man, they're worried about the weekend weather. They're talking about heat waves up there, heat indexes of 110. You know, you kind of live in the South and you say, that's summertime. But for folks up there, and here's the difference we got to remember. We enjoy air conditioning, those of us who live in the South.
Yeah.
Basically can't live without it.
Yeah.
But a lot of folks up there, you take big cities like Chicago and Philly and New York, a lot of those folks don't have air conditioning. So this is dangerous weather, so we got to keep those folks in prayer this weekend. Yeah, that's for sure.
That's for sure.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, got a message for moms and dads. You'll soon be sending your little Johnny and little Janies off to indoctrination school. Now, they used to be called, places of higher learning, sometimes universities, but now they're indoctrination centers now, folks. If you haven't realized that, we're going to help convince you today about that. There is a group called Campus Reform. Now, they're a conservative group, and their leader, Cabot Phillips, you've probably seen him on Fox News. Here's what happens. He goes on campuses all over the country today, asking and challenging students about certain issues of the day, where they stand on important political issues, the economy, et cetera, et cetera. And the answers are sometimes very shocking. Perhaps you will not be surprised that many, many times when he gets a response, it is from a very leftist ideology. All right. So, there's been a lot of controversy about what's going on down on the border. The president trying to secure our southern borders. First, the Democrats say there's no crisis there. Now they say there is a crisis, and the president is failing to resolve that crisis. That's the way it goes in our politics in this country today. Anyway, Cabot Phillips of Campus Reform recently went on the campus of Georgetown University. And this was the question that he had for the students. Cut number 1.
Donald Trump announced this past week that he would be urging ICE and other administration authorities to seek out people living here illegally that have broken the law, to deport them. So I have a quote for you here that's been making the rounds on social media about the deportation of criminal illegal aliens. "We are a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our laws, and I believe they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%, and we're going to keep focusing on threats to our security."
All right, so that was the quote from a president that he gave to the students, and he asked for their response. Cut number 2.
I think that policy comes from a place of white American nationalism. Donald Trump has kind of embraced this rhetoric of racism and xenophobia that is not beneficial to our country at all.
I don't think that
that quote really stands true.
This administration has totally not done anything moral.
This is really awful.
The United States should be open to like immigrants, like it's like they call it land of the free for a reason.
We just have to advocate for those kind of people, and people like in Congress, like Ocasio-Cortez, who is helping people overcome these kinds of things.
Crimes do not nullify your humanity, and people are coming here in search of opportunity.
All right, so there you have it. Very sympathetic, sounding like Democrats, sounding like the mainstream media. The crisis is all Donald Trump's fault because they assumed that the comment that was read to them from a president was President Trump. Big shock. Here's the guy who actually said that quote. Here's the president who actually said that quote. You probably will remember the voice, but it is Barack Obama. Cut 3.
Even as we are a nation of immigrants, we're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%. And that's why we're going to keep focusing enforcement resources on actual threats to our security.
So there you have it. Wow. Wow. What do you suppose? How did they respond? Because he went back, Cabot Phillips of Campus Reform, then went back to these students and said, excuse me, here's a video. Here is the president who actually said those things that just a few minutes ago you condemned because you were sure it was Donald Trump. Cut number 4.
Is that surprising?
Yeah, a little bit.
Why is that surprising?
Because I thought it was the Trump administration that said something like that.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. I thought it was from Trump.
I didn't expect it to be Obama either.
Why did you not expect it to be Obama?
Because I guess, I don't know, like, it never occurred to me that it could be Obama.
Is that surprising that it's a quote from President Obama?
Yeah, that was surprising for sure, yeah.
Do you think it's still a practice of white nationalism, though, to deport criminal illegal aliens?
I think the way Trump's doing it is.
Okay. But President Obama, to this point in Trump's presidency, Obama actually deported more people, though. So it's, in practice, it was more from Obama, though.
What's your question?
Did you listen to the responses? I couldn't believe it, but, well, it was President Obama who said that. Well, and then he asked, well, he's the one that did the deporting. Well, I was pretty sure it had to be Trump. It couldn't be Obama that did that. Listen, folks, I was only half joking when I said our campuses across this country have become indoctrination centers. That is what they have become. They are indoctrinated to believe that everything that conservatives stand for, whether it's Christian beliefs, whether it's the economy, whether it's border security, they have been told that conservatives are all wrong, that conservatives are not compassionate, that conservatives have no right to believe in nationalism, be patriots. And they've been told that their response should be elect Democrats. That's what they've been told. That's the indoctrination point of this. Let's play that clip number 4 again, Rob, because I want you to hear once again the students discover that the hard line against illegal immigration, the quote actually came from Barack Obama in 2014. Listen once again to their responses, folks.
Is that surprising?
Yeah, a little bit.
Why is that surprising?
Because I thought it was the Trump administration that said something like that.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. I thought it was from Trump.
I didn't expect it to be Obama either.
Why did you not expect it to be Obama?
Because I guess, I don't know, like, it never occurred to me that it could be Obama.
Is that surprising that it's a quote from President Obama?
Yeah, that was surprising for sure, yeah.
Do you think it's still a practice of white nationalism, though, to deport criminal illegal aliens?
I think the way Trump's doing it is.
Okay. But President Obama, to this point in Trump's presidency, Obama actually deported more people, though. So it's, in practice, it was more from Obama, though.
What's your question?
You know, it's amazing. It's these kids, they are not stupid kids.
No.
Now, I want to make that point. These are intelligent kids, but they have been programmed, probably starting in their high schools, and then it's all just reinforced when they get to universities. They are programmed that anything conservative, like I say, whether it's economics, whether it's faith beliefs, whatever the case may be, they are programmed to say it's wrong. You know, one of the, I think it was a young lady there, it never occurred to me that it would be Barack Obama. It never occurred to me. Well, because she hasn't been told that Barack Obama did that when he was in office. Oh, and by the way, the images that you've seen from the border with kids in, and I'm putting in quotation marks, in cages, guess who built the vast, vast, vast majority of those so-called cages? Not Donald Trump, not the Trump administration. It was Barack Obama. It's unbelievable. It just, you know, it had to be Trump. That's their response. That's what they're programmed to say. It's sad.
You know, when we first, all three of us, when we first heard that group of students talking, we all giggled, laughed. But that's probably one of the saddest things that I've heard in a long time. I really feel like the indoctrination of our college-age kids that's going on right now is one of the greatest threats our country has.
Oh, absolutely. Because they are tomorrow's teachers. They are tomorrow's lawyers and judges. They are tomorrow's politicians. And they have been programmed. They are tomorrow's moms and dads. And that's why we keep raising the alarm bells over this, folks. Number one, mom and dad, you're listening today, you're Christians. You really have to put some thought into the fact, do you want to spend the money that God has given you to send your kids off to a place where their goal is to undermine basically everything that you've taught them? Is that what really God would have you to do with your money? And you put up your hands, well, you know, Johnny wants to be a doctor, Johnny wants to be a lawyer, or whatever the case may be. There are Christian schools out there, folks. Now, you may say also, well, my Johnny, my Janie has been well trained. They will do just fine. Well, I congratulate you on that. That you know you've discipled them and you've taken them to church and they're grounded spiritually. But please know, if you make that decision, that you are placing them in the enemy's camp. Just know that. Now, some people say, well, what are we going to do? Because we're supposed to be salt and light, so we have to send our kids there. But the track record is many times Christian kids end up getting confused. They end up being indoctrinated, turned off against things Christian and Christian values. So yes, I mean, if you pray it up and you say, I just want my kids to go there, well, just be aware they are going to be in the enemy's camp, and they had better be well grounded. If you have concerns about that, then maybe you want to try something else. I have said for years that I think it would be a great idea if when your kids are going through their senior year, that you think about sending your kids to Bible school for at least a year. Send them to Bible school for at least a year so they get further grounding. Yeah, I'm talking about a good Bible school. They get further grounding in the scriptures. And perhaps that will prepare them more. Not to mention the fact that the benefits of a 17-year-old coming out of high school or 18-year-old coming out of high school, being that first year away from mom and dad and where they've grown up in a Christian environment. That is going to be a help to them. I spent a year at Bible school, and I have never regretted it. Never regretted it. Had so many benefits, not the least of which is where I met my wife.
Just a question here. Did a lot of your stuff that you took at the Bible school, did that transfer into any other university as well?
I actually did the Bible school at the end of the secular university. Okay. But I would recommend, if I could go back, I would have done Bible school right at the first.
Okay.
That was helpful. All right, much more ahead. You may be shocked, but Congresswoman Omar is still at it. But she's getting some blowback from a lot of different locations to her proposals. In particular, the latest is she's put forward a resolution, a boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. We'll talk more about that when we come back, plus much more when we come back here on Focal Point. Right back.
But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The American Psychological Association has created a task force on consensual non-monogamy, an effort they say is necessary to reduce the stigma on polyamory. They argue the ability to engage in desired intimacy without social and medical stigmatization is not a liberty for all. So the task force seeks to address the needs of people who practice consensual non-monogamy as they are another marginalized identity group. The entirety of our cultural struggle is whose word will prevail, God's word or man's word. When you reject God's word, thinking becomes futile and the foolish heart plunges into darkness.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Tomorrow, July 20th, we celebrate the golden anniversary of human beings walking on the moon. July 20th, 1969. At 4:17 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the Apollo 11 lunar module, piloted by astronaut Neil Armstrong, touched down on the surface of the moon, proclaiming, quote, "Houston, this is Tranquility Base. The Eagle has landed," end quote. About 6 hours later, Neil Armstrong stepped out onto the lunar surface declaring that it was, quote, "one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," end quote. Everyone old enough to watch remembers what they were doing and who they were with when they watched the almost unimaginable event take place. I don't think any of us could quite believe it was actually happening. And I don't think many of us can believe it was actually 50 years ago. It did fill us with pride that Americans were the first to the moon. I don't think any of us thought no other country would follow us there, or that we would abandon moonwalks ourselves. It did give us encouragement in the midst of turbulent times that when human beings pulled together, they were capable of great things. Former Governor and Senator from Nebraska, Bob Kerrey, said that he had just come back from Vietnam, where he had been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, and he was in a naval hospital recuperating from having part of his leg amputated. He remembered that watching Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk on the moon that night, quote, "gave me hope," end quote. I think it gave us all hope that our technology could make possible tremendous progress. But it couldn't, and it can't, heal what ails the human heart. Only God can do that. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
And we are back to Focal Point. Fred Jackson sitting in for Brian Fisher today. Brian on his way to his new home on the West Coast.
He is.
And Jeff, we have an update on his journey.
Yeah, just about an hour ago, he went ahead and texted me a message, and if you don't mind, I'd like to read that.
Absolutely.
Okay, he said, we just crossed into Idaho on I-90. Seeing the Idaho mountains, rivers, and forests again was like almost like coming home. And he said heading to our new home in the Pacific Northwest area, should be there tonight.
Oh.
The livestock, which he's talking about, is his cats. The livestock slept well last night and were quiet. They're getting used to
How many cats do
prison
they have?
life, I think.
How many cats do they have?
Life behind bars. Two.
Two.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Well, in case you don't know, and I'm sure Brian has mentioned it a number of times, he lived in Boise, Idaho for years and years, so he's familiar with that turf. That must be nice for them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Debbie loves it.
Yeah.
She's always talked highly of the Boise, Idaho area.
Yeah. Well, that's still
They
a good...
just love the mountains. They
Oh,
miss
yeah.
the mountains so much.
Oh, I know. That's quite a drive, though, from Boise over to where they're headed on the West Coast.
Yeah, a little bit.
So he's getting there.
All right. The cities get farther apart as you get past out west.
Ever. Yeah, sort of the gas stations. So be careful out there as you roll along. Well, I'm glad to hear that Brian and Deb and their son are doing just great, and the cars are operating his what's the vintage?
1965 Pontiac Le Mans.
Still making it, huh?
Oh, yeah. He drove it out here and drove it back.
Yeah. Oh, he loves that car.
Runs good.
I tell you what. All right. Well, good to hear from Brian, and we look forward to, I believe, it's a week from this coming Monday that he plans to be back on the air here at Focal Point.
It's true.
Get all settled away out there on the West Coast.
And he did want one other thing that he wanted to mention is he wanted to say thank you very much. He hasn't had a chance to listen, but he knows that you do a good job, and he wanted to give his expressed thanks.
Well, I sure appreciate that. It's an honor to fill in for Brian. There's no one like Brian. You can't replace Brian Fisher. I mean, listen, when I travel and people come up, Brian is one of their favorites.
Mm-hmm.
There is no question about it. And his wisdom and his love for the Lord just comes through every program. There's no question about that, and we are truly blessed to have Brian as part of the team. Well, back to the news of the day, and certainly making news this week, Congressman Ilhan Omar. Well, she went back after making a whole lot of noise and criticism of the president. She went back home last evening to her hometown of Minneapolis, and whether it was orchestrated by her people there, there's a whole pile of people at the airport, and she couldn't resist taking another swipe at President Trump, calling him a fascist. Let's hear to what she had to say. Cut number 5.
I want to make sure that every single person who is in this country, who's aspiring to become part of the American fabric, understands that nothing this president says should be taken to heart. We are Americans as much as everyone else, and as much as he's spewing his fascist ideology on stage, telling you as citizens to go back because they don't agree with his detrimental policies for our country, we tell people that here in the United States, dissent is patriotic.
Well, there you have it. The only problem is that, like Barack Obama, she is part of the Democratic team that wants to fundamentally change this country. And by the way, he's not saying she can't express her views. All he's saying is, if you hate this country so much, why don't you go live somewhere else? Plain and simple. What is it about this country that, by the way, you decided to leave Somalia, to get out of Somalia, your home country from whence you came? What is it about this country that attracted you? What has changed? I mean, we have the greatest economy on the face of the earth. We still have religious freedom that we need to keep fighting for, folks. We have that. She is part of a very large Somali community, Muslim community, Islamic community there in the Minneapolis area. No one is saying shut down the mosque there or anything of that nature. She has that freedom. Well, you know, there are some Republicans, I wish there were more, there are some Republicans that are supporting the president, and we say again, we don't always agree with the way President Trump expresses himself. First to say that. But what he's saying is true. He believes in this country. And he doesn't want to change things as much as return things to things that have made this country great. One of those Republicans who is supporting the president is a former presidential rival to the president, Marco Rubio, Senator Marco Rubio of Florida. This is what he was saying on his Twitter account, cut number 6.
The hypocrisy, the self-righteousness outrages people too. And on top of it, you have these 4 members who are Americans, but they're also political bullies. They go around attacking people, but when you hit them back, it's because they're women of color. It's absurd. People are tired of this game. You have to immediately respond, pick a side between these two. It's a game I'm not going to play.
Yeah, and he makes a very good point there. He says women of color. And I honestly believe they're using their skin color as a cover of sorts so that they'll spew all of these anti-American things. But if you criticize them, you're racist. That is the game that they're playing right now. And also to that point, Matt Schlapp of the American Conservative Union on Fox and Friends this morning defended the president and speaking out against socialism, which is what the squad, these 4 members of Congress, really believe in. Cut number 7.
These people, when they call the president a fascist, it makes immigrants who came from fascist regimes, it makes them outraged. Donald Trump is standing up for individual freedoms. These people who support Trump oppose fascism. Socialism is just another form of fascism. If we can't win this battle, America will never be the same.
So there you have it. That battle will be ongoing, and there's other more important things that our politicians should be dealing with right now. But the squad is controlling the narrative right now, certainly in the mainstream media, much to the chagrin, quite frankly, of many Democrats. They would like to get the focus back on other things. Robert Mueller is supposed to appear before some congressional hearings next week. Remember him? Mueller report. Oh, yeah. A lot of people. And actually, the Democrats are saying this is going to be a big bust because nobody cares about this anymore. Honestly, it's a yawner. And some other things they'd like to do, but these 4, these 4 are getting all the attention. And I predict they'll continue to do that. And that is actually going to hurt the Democrats. But in some fashion, I think it's going to win praise and support for President Trump. All right, one of the things, and you probably missed this yesterday, is that in the House there was a vote on raising the federal minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour. Now, the Democrats were hoping to make a big deal of this yesterday. Nancy Pelosi had a news conference and had all kinds of folks there, and you probably didn't even see a story on it last night. But we have Chris Woodward in studio with us from American Family News, and it's been talked about, Chris, quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
But the actual vote yesterday didn't get much traction.
It did not. It got lost in the news cycle over things people said at President Trump's rally and what the squad had to say in response and things like that. So, yeah, it got lost in a little bit of a shuffle, which is why you need to go to onenewsnow.com because we do post these things on our website, and we did have this AP story yesterday.
All right. So, Chris, if you believe the Democrats, this is an economic utopia.
Oh, yeah.
This is just going to change our country.
It is.
If we raise the federal minimum wage to $15.
Right.
What say you?
Well, they're doubling it right now from the federal minimum of $7.25 to $15 an hour. That's what the House approved yesterday. And talking about this idea that it would be an economic stimulus, we're going to do clip 10 here of Steny Hoyer saying this would be great for the economy.
We have now seen the longest time between raising the minimum wage since it was adopted in the New Deal in the 30s. Too long to allow people to be stuck at a wage while their cost of their groceries goes up, their cost of their mortgage goes up, their cost of everything they do is going up, and they're stuck. That's not fair, that's not right, that's not what America should be doing. And very frankly, yes, it will benefit people on the minimum wage, but it's going to advantage all of America. All of America is going to be advantaged because they're going to go out and spend, and they're going to buy groceries, they're going to buy clothes, they're going to buy things they need.
Now, he is factually accurate saying that it would benefit people on minimum wage. They would go from as low as $7.25 to as much as $15 an hour, and people somewhere in that range would also get a bump in pay theoretically too. But everybody knows what's going to happen. The grocery store that's all of a sudden going to be forced to pay their employees, their baggers, their checkers, the meat man, whatever, $15 an hour. What do you think they're going to do with their groceries, their product they're trying to sell to make ends meet, to pay those workers? Your groceries are going to go up, and this guy is of the opinion that you'll have the extra money, so it's no big deal. This is going to help the economy, they think.
Well, and what gets me too is I assume the worker at McDonald's, the 17, 18-year-old working at McDonald's,
right,
all of a sudden be making $15 an hour.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, and so, no, what's going to happen to the price of your Happy Meal?
Oh, sure, yeah. The Heritage Foundation has done studies to this effect, and cost estimates vary, but obviously they're going to have to raise everything from a hamburger to the price of a Happy Meal or just any value meal, quote-unquote value meal, things like that. Speaking of the Heritage Foundation, I talked with Rachel Gressler of the Heritage Foundation. She told me a $15 an hour minimum wage would cost an employer over $38,000 per year to employ somebody at that level when you add on all of the federally required taxes and benefits and things like that. A lot of people are not aware, but an employer is responsible for more than just what goes on the paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
They have to chip into that person's Social Security. They have to fund unemployment insurance, all these kinds of things. And, you know, oftentimes I think lawmakers, not just Democrats, but lawmakers in general, they tend to think about the worker, but they don't think about the employer, which is employing people and also, oh, by the way, paying taxes and chipping in and trying to make this economy continue to run.
There's some people that have estimated that if this was to go through, and it's probably not going to, it's not going to pass the
Not
Senate.
likely to get through McConnell.
No, okay. But what it's going to do is cause some people, somebody has done analysis on this, over 3 million jobs across the country.
Yeah, that was the Congressional Budget Office. So an entity basically of Congress looking at the information as presented to the office from Congress. It's not a Koch brothers think tank or whatever somebody on the left wants to label it as. That's literally somebody in Washington in the halls of Congress taking the data given to them by Congress. One other interesting statistic here from the Heritage Foundation. Rachel Gressler said, you know, imagine you're a small employer, a mom and pop, and you own a family restaurant. You've got 10 employees. You've all of a sudden got to start paying them $15 an hour compared to the $7.25 minimum. That's a huge impact, obviously. Rachel did some math and found that the employer would have to make $67,000 more per week to cover the expenses of the higher wage bills. If you're a mom and pop restaurant in Northeast Mississippi selling fish and steak and hamburgers and whatever else, there is no way you're going to make $67,000 more per week. You're going to be hard pressed to make that anywhere.
Yeah, and to your point that it's not just an exaggeration or speculation. We had the story earlier this week where a chain of restaurants, I believe based in Seattle, chain of about 35, and they said upper end restaurants. Now Seattle brought in $15 minimum wage. City of Seattle, back a few years ago. They announced they were shutting down that chain this week. Part of the reason is the $15 minimum wage. They're in Seattle, and they had 7 restaurants in the Seattle area. So they had to shut down, and they're blaming this. They can't afford to pay their employees that kind of money because what happens is they have to raise the price of a steak from $14 to $24.
Yeah.
Businesses, and in the minds of Democrats, profit is a dirty word. But that's the reason you go into business, is to make a profit.
Right.
If you can't make a profit, there is no point.
Yeah. Yeah, and odds are in the Seattle area, most of the business owners aren't voting Republican.
No.
So the Democrats are hurting their own people when they ramrod these kinds of policies in without thinking about many of the people who probably are chipping in on their campaigns.
You know, I have to wonder sometimes, are the Democrats that economically naive / stupid, or do they know that this is going to be catastrophic? And there's even, they make the claim, and we were talking about this morning, they make the claim, this will get more people off of food stamps.
Yeah.
They make that claim.
Yeah, there is sound here from Speaker Pelosi, clip 9.
$7.25 an hour paid to workers, while the federal government has to subsidize food stamps, housing support, health care in different ways. And why should we be subsidizing businesses or exploiting workers by paying $7.25 an hour?
Now, allow me to speak frankly here. If anybody thinks the party that has been using more pay for more workers argument for decades now, if all of a sudden they're going to reduce spending on food stamps and give people a raise and then never use that as a political tool again, you are way past the town of naive.
Hey, listen. We're going to end this segment on a bit of a humorous note. Headline from Fox News, Bernie Sanders campaign workers complaining, fleeing over poverty wages.
Oh,
They feel the burn.
We feel your pain, Bernie
Yes.
workers. All right, Chris, thanks so much
Thank
for being
you.
with us. Chris Woodward, American Family News. Hey, time to hear from you, folks. 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840. What do you think of this minimum wage thing? What do you think of Congresswoman Omar and her fascist claims? 888-589-8840 is the number to call. We'll go to you right after the break.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
Patients have legal rights they often don't exercise. First, they can demand that information for an appointment be kept private from their health plan if they pay cash in full on the day of their appointment. Second, they can refuse to sign the HIPAA form or the embedded Notice of Privacy Practices statement. There is no legal requirement to sign, and not signing indicates a desire to keep personal information private. Third, if patients are members of health-sharing organizations, they are not required and should not tell the hospital about their membership. Members are uninsured. Hospitals should perceive these patients as the uninsured patients they are and give them a cash-based price for care. To keep your rights, act to protect them.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Remember the Sunday school song, "Be careful, little eyes, what you see"? That warning is even more appropriate today. The Ministry of 1 Million Moms has continued the work of Brother Don Wildman, pushing back against unsafe and unwholesome media. By raising awareness with sponsors, we've recently contributed to the cancellation of shows like Once Upon a Time, The Mick, and Impastor. It's free to add your voice to 1 Million Moms. Visit 1millionmoms.com and help us protect little eyes.
AFR's own J.J. Jasper is a morning on-air personality, author, comedian, Christian, and family man. J.J.'s also a keynote speaker at banquets, men's ministry events, pregnancy center fundraisers, and more. Here's what others are saying.
Hi, this is Nancy Westling, Executive Director of the Pregnancy Care Clinic in Salem, Illinois. JJ's helped us set a record for the most funds raised at our banquet.
Information on J.J.'s availability to speak at your event is at jjjasper.com.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
My story begins with debt, a lot of debt, credit card debt, and I heard a commercial for Trinity. I gave them a call.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
When I first called, I was a little embarrassed and kind of ashamed, and I looked at the numbers and I saw how quickly that astronomical debt that was in my life would go away.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
What I would tell other people, please pick up the phone and call Trinity. Just let them put together a program and see how affordable and easy it is to pay off your debt.
Call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813. That's 1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
And we are back to this Friday edition of Focal Point. Brett Jackson sitting in for Brian. You know, we've been talking about the Democrats that promise you the moon, but what they don't like to talk about is how they're going to pay for that little trip. And very interesting, there's a story on One News Now right now. This is actually, folks, an Associated Press story. Associated Press, no friend of Donald Trump, and pretty much in the bag for the Democratic Party. But here's their headline: 2020 Dems grapple with how to pay for Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders, you know, the guy I just mentioned who apparently he's losing workers because he's paying poverty wages. Bernie Sanders, the chief proponent of Medicare for all, says his model of Medicare for all, you ready for this, will cost you, the taxpayers, $40 trillion over a decade. That's $4 trillion a year. I think my math is right on that. $4 trillion a year. Now this is Bernie admitting what it's going to cost the taxpayers to do this kind of thing. I tell you what, if you just step back for a moment, folks, and consider what they are talking about, Medicare for all, we're going to pay your tuition bill. No worries. Right. It's a lie. Plain and simple. It's a bold-faced lie. It's socialism. Look at socialist countries. The middle class, despite what the Democrats say, it's the middle class that will be affected the most. You know what will be affected the most by raising the $15 federal minimum wage? Middle class. They are amongst the 3 million who will lose jobs. Not the folks that are really rich and not the folks that are dependent on government programs to exist right now. It's the hardworking middle class. They will be impacted the most negatively by all of this.
And the middle class of America stands out when you compare it to the rest of the nations across the globe, doesn't
They're
it?
the hard workers. They're the men and women that get up every morning and go to work and plow through a hard day and then come home and feed their families and take care of their families. Those are the people that will be affected the most. All right, let's go to our phones. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Let's go first to the great state of Texas. And Sean is on the line. Sean, welcome. Hi, Sean. Are you with us?
How are you?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment on the minimum wage.
Yes.
The day that the minimum wage goes up to $15 an hour is the day that 43 of my employees lose their job immediately. And the sad part about it is, we got the 1-2 punch from Obamacare. Those 43 employees are all part-time employees because they had to be moved to part-time because I couldn't afford to have them full-time. I couldn't afford Obamacare. So I had a lot of people lost their job because they couldn't move to part-time. So that hit us a few years ago. Then if they raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, they're all out of business. And, I'm in a city of 25,000 people. Jobs aren't everywhere in that city, but sure, there's jobs for a better economy, but they're not everywhere. What are these people going to do? Nothing? And, the sad part is we're known as the company of second chances. And what that means is if you have a record, if you've been in trouble, if you're on probation and you're straight out of jail, come see us because we'll judge you on your future, not your past. So half the people I have working for me couldn't get a job elsewhere because of their record or they might be on probation or something. Yeah. And you know what? They make great workers if you treat them right, and we treat them right. And we'll mentor them, and we'll do anything we can for them. And the sad part about this is I'm not the only business that's like this. There's so many other businesses across the country that not only will these people lose a job, but this is a whole sector of people that can't get a normal job because of their record or because they've been in trouble. Yeah. And it'll make it even harder for them. It's really sad, Sean, and one thing about about Medicare for all, that Medicaid pays on average 80% less than an insurance company. Yeah. 80% less. Mm-hmm. It's not Medicaid that keeps doctors or hospitals in business. It's insurance companies that do. Mm-hmm. If the American people think that their health care is not going to change when doctors and hospitals get paid 80% less, they've got their head in the sand. They don't know what's going on. And it's sad that these people are just lying to the American people about everything just for the power grab.
Yeah. Sean, I don't want you to mention the name of your business, but what kind of business is it? Can you tell us that?
We do promotions for different businesses around the tri-state area.
Okay.
And like I said, we like to hire people that are in trouble because a lot of these people, they don't have anywhere else to go. And people that get in trouble, a lot of them are trying to turn their lives around. And they'll do anything to turn their lives around, a lot of these people. And they're great people. But they just need to be given a chance. And it's just sad.
It is. Sean, thank you so much. That is tremendous testimony. You are a voice of reality to all of this. And I just wish Bernie Sanders and Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and these other Democrats that are proposing these ridiculous things could hear your voice today. Sean, thank you so much. Man, there's a business owner. He knows. You heard him say there, Obamacare already forced him to reduce the hours of his employees, raising it from $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour, the federal minimum wage, would put him out of business.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if Nancy Pelosi cares about, what do you say, they have 35, 40 employees, something like that. I wonder, does she ever think about this? She's just saying what a certain number of her base want to hear. I tell you what. Well, listen, folks, we're, what are we, 14, 15 months to the election next
Really?
year? Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
14, 15 months. Get educated, folks. Get educated. They'll promise you the world. They'll promise you the moon. And I'll tell you what, that's all it is. It's empty promises. Lori in Oklahoma. Go ahead, Lori.
Hey, I really appreciate everything that gentleman said on the previous call. I applaud him for what he's doing, helping to get people a second chance. Listening to Nancy and her group of crazy people spouting off those promises, it reminds me of the rooster trying to show off in the hen house, but not giving the truth. The bottom line is, if you raise up the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it's like it was mentioned earlier, it's going to cost your groceries to go up. So it's not going to change the people's dependency on food stamps and supplement. It's going to cause an increase for the simple fact that people will lose their jobs, like the gentleman said in the previous calls. Part of the other problem is people in this country have become like lulled to sleep when it comes to common sense and knowledge and understanding. And I believe it has happened quite on purpose through our public education system. They're so bent on teaching and brainwashing our children about social justice, they don't teach them factual history, which is why you have a community of people coming up that don't have respect for the flag, don't have respect for our country, that don't have a clue of what's going on at the border. They're not teaching them basic math and economics so they can understand that everything has a consequence, or, a cause and effect, or cause and reactions. And so this is just like dangling a carrot before a hungry horse. It's going to cause problems, not solve problems. And I wish America would wake up and realize that 1 and 1 does equal 2, and that you can't always get what you want just because you're emotional, that you have to work to attain a higher income. It's not something you just deserve.
Amen. They should ought to give you a place in Congress someday there, Lori. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we have Republicans who will not say what you just said because they want to try to get along with their fellow Democrats. Thank you, Lori. We've got some great listeners on Focal Point.
Man, great calls this week.
We do. Praise the Lord for you folks. We sure appreciate you. Let's go to Louisiana and Jesse. Go ahead, Jesse.
Hey,
yes, Jesse.
What happens to folks making $8 and $9? They're not going to get a full $7.75 pay raise like the ones that are making minimum wage are getting fired. What about the ones making 15 already? They're not going to get a pay raise at all, but their cost of living is going to go up, and they're not going. And they're going to have to do something with the food stamp system and make new brackets and everything else.
Yep.
What is that going to do to everyone's taxes also? But the guys making $16, $17 an hour, they're not going to see anything. Their cost of living is going to go up.
Yep. Yep. Jesse, that is another point. We talked about this in the newsroom this morning. Just let me paint a picture for you folks. Let's say there's a plant and it makes tires. And the men and women working in that plant, they've been there for 5-10 years. And right now they're making $11, $12 an hour. There's a McDonald's across the street. All of a sudden, the McDonald's worker's making $15 an hour. So the plant's going to have to raise their salary another $3 an hour to match the 15. But then those workers are going to say, wait a minute, the kid that's just out of high school is making $15 across the street, and you're paying me $15 after working 10 years at this plant? We're going to need more, boss. We're going to need more because just like our Jesse, we appreciate your point of view. just like Jesse said there, their cost of living is going to go up too. So they're going to have to pay more. So that means for us who buy tires, the price of tires are going to go up. This is basic economics, folks. Basic economics. And like I say, either the Democrats are economically naive, stupid, or they know exactly what they're doing. You know what socialism does? Socialism makes everybody equally poor. That's what socialism is, and it doesn't work at all. Well, listen, thank you. Those are 3 great calls. Thank you so much. I wish we had more time today. But we want to go out on this program today as we wrap up the week here in Focal Point with a question. Where were you when? All right. If you don't realize already, we're having the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. Rob and I were talking about this morning. Were you born yet?
Yes,
you
I
were.
was. I was in elementary school. I
Elementary
remember
school?
that they pulled out, one of the few times they pulled out a TV and put it in the classroom. We all got to sit and watch.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating times. I know exactly where I was, just looking at this moment when a manned spacecraft leaving this Earth, heading out over space. What is it? Is it 200,000 miles?
I don't know.
I'm going.
Long ways.
It's a long way.
Yeah.
And then circling that moon, and then that lunar module becoming detached from the command module, and then heading down. You talk about movie suspense. So we want to take you back. Now, the voice you're going to hear is Walter Cronkite. He was Mr. News in those days. And so you're going to hear his voice, but you're also going to hear the voice, of course, of Neil Armstrong, the astronaut who stepped slowly down the ladder of that lunar module after it landed and put his foot on the moon. So let's take you back 50 years.
Man is about to launch himself on a trip to the moon.
2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
What a moment. Man on the way to the moon.
11, Houston, if that's not the Earth, we're in trouble. Roger, Eagle, send dot. Roger, how does it look? The Eagle has wings. Houston, you're a go for landing, over. Roger, understand, go for landing. 30 feet, 2.5 down. We're drifting to the right a little. 30 seconds.
Oh, jeez.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
We're home.
Man on the moon.
Boy.
Okay, we're going to be busy for a minute.
There he is. There's a foot coming down the step.
I'm at the foot of the ladder.
Armstrong is on the moon.
Yeah,
Neil
they're above the limb now.
Armstrong, 38-year-old American, standing on the surface of the moon on this July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Wow. Boy, that brings back some memories. What an incredible time. You know, it was really interesting just sitting here listening to that again. I remember when they were doing their descent onto the moon's surface. Now, they were highly sophisticated computer-wise aboard that lunar module. But at the last few moments there, Neil Armstrong actually had to take manual control of the lunar module because the maps that they had in the simulators weren't the same as what he was seeing. So he took manual control of that and set that one down.
He was headed into a big crater.
Yes.
If he hadn't done that,
yeah,
it would have been disaster.
I also remember them bouncing around the moon, seeing that actually for the first time.
Yeah.
Having a great old time.
I remember the emotions from everybody that was on sets.
Yes.
Tears were flowing.
Walter Cronkite was crying.
Yeah.
It was about one of the few times. All right, listen, great to be with you, and hope you remember with your kids that big moment in history. It has been good to be with you this week, and keep praying for Brian and Deb as they head to the West Coast in their new home. More great programming ahead here on American Family Radio today and all weekend long. Bye for now.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.